Welcome to MissouriNet.com. I'm Bill Pollock. An exciting week ahead of Missouri Tiger fans as, do you believe it, Mizzou back in the SEC championship game for the second year in a row. I don't think many of us thought that they would get there the first time this quick, but 2 times in 3 years, certainly quite an accomplishment for the Missouri Tigers, but they'll have their hands full against the Alabama Crimson Tide, who come into this game ranked number 1. And to talk about this matchup and just what type of chances Missouri has this Saturday is Shane Bailey from SEC Sports Roundtable.com. Shane, glad to have you back with us here on this Google Hangout. And before we get into the game itself, do you see any situation at all, any scenario possible where if Missouri were to win this game, where the SEC has one of the 4 playoff spots?
Only if total chaos ensues and upsets galore. I mean, you look at Florida State sitting there every week. I say they're going to lose, and they find a way to win. As soon as they lose, if that's to happen against Georgia Tech, they're going to plummet. I don't think the committee is high on Florida State. Otherwise, why would you not have an undefeated team as number 1? You know, they've not had a lot of belief and faith in them, in my opinion, the entire season, because they can't get them to the number 1 spot. And with it, and you're even seeing teams like Alabama jump in front of them after they have big wins. So they don't believe in Florida State. So if they lose, they're just going to it's going to be a precipitous fall for them. And I believe that's the case. Now, can they lose to Georgia Tech? Of course. Can they win against Georgia Tech? Well, if the way they've played and come from behind and play so bad in the first half and just turn it on in the second half stays put, yeah, they're going to win. But they're going to have to lose. You're going to have to see total chaos in the Big 12 with TCU and Baylor. You're going to have to see, of course, Alabama getting upset and Oregon losing at Arizona or against Arizona in the Pac-12. Now all of a sudden you have all of those teams and Ohio State.
Right.
You know, so if you take all of those teams and they all lose, which is possible but unlikely, you know, now you see a scenario where it's wide open and there's a bunch of teams there sitting with 2 losses, and Missouri's the SEC champion. So that's going to carry a lot of weight and could actually boost them into that top 4. Now, that's a lot of things that are going to have to fall into place for Missouri to make it to the championship Final Four, and they still got to get past Alabama.
And maybe I'm just being cynical too, but I also see a scenario where, let's say, all of those things that you mentioned fall into place, and Missouri does win the game, and they win, I don't know, 23-20, or I could see the committee keeping Alabama in the 4 with 2 losses.
That Indiana loss really hurts you guys at Missouri, and the Georgia, shutout. It was, if you would have had a good performance against Georgia, and they're going to look and see how well Georgia Tech plays against Florida State. And now you all of a sudden you've got the number 3 team, Florida State. If they lose to Georgia Tech, well, Georgia Tech beat Georgia, who Georgia destroyed Missouri. You know, you've got all these 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon playing in the college football scenarios, and who knows what they think, but I think that would have to carry some weight to say, well, you know, Georgia Tech beat them, but Georgia just destroyed Missouri, and that hurts your chances even further. So there's lots of things that are playing against Missouri to get to the Final Four, even if they were able to find a way to beat Alabama, which is not going to be an easy task.
Shane, this just popped into my head. We're with Shane Bailey from SEC Sports Roundtable.com, and so maybe I'll save, because I'm going to have Nick Jones from BamaHammer.com on, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the game with him on a Google Hangout. But I want to bring this up, and I don't know where this will lead this conversation, but I'm not throwing out a conspiracy thing at all. I just want to float this idea.
Oh, I like conspiracy theories. Let's go.
You like this? Okay. Look, the SEC, for the last, what has it been, eight years in a row that they've had a team in the championship game?
And won 7 of them.
Right. They agreed to this football playoff system, and now there's an opportunity where if the team that wins the SEC championship game on Saturday, being the Missouri Tigers, if they win that SEC championship, it's the first time then in 8 years that the SEC will not have a chance at winning a national championship. Now, I'm not saying that that they're sitting around, that the league commissioners are sitting around saying, guys, we can't have this happen. But don't you think that any and this might be completely subconscious, or any 50-50 call or anything that looks close that could go either way, whether it's on a replay, don't you see every single one of those calls going in Alabama's favor? And that opens up a can of worms, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just don't see that. I mean, I would have thought that at the Iron Bowl. But, you look at some of those plays, I forgot who were the two players that were caught up in that, but the Alabama defense basically caught the ball and had his foot in, took the ball out of bounds. He had possession first. They called it joint possession. Well, in my opinion, when he had he had full possession and the guy had his hands on top of it. His second foot went out of bounds. Now the ball is dead. The play is out of bounds. So they were wrestling for control out of bounds. Alabama player had full control first, in my opinion, if you looked at that replay, because it landed right in the breadbasket.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So they called that dual possession. They had two of those calls within 5 minutes of that game. Both went Auburn's way. If you were a conspiracy theorist and you think that the refs are out for you, those calls would have went Alabama's way, especially after the way they were struggling at that point. That's where they were fighting for that comeback, because and that's what was so great about the ebb and flow of that game, because all of a sudden Blake Sims was the best quarterback in the world because he went 5 for 5, and all the announcers were talking about how great he was, and now they're talking about how bad he was after he turned around and threw 3 picks. So
you're absolutely right. Those are good points you bring up. But the conspiracy theorist would say, well, Alabama already had the game won because Mississippi State lost, so they already knew where they were headed. So even a loss wouldn't have hurt them at that point.
But that could have dropped them to 3.
Well, true.
So from a conspiracy theorist standpoint, now if you want to take it that way, that might have dropped them to 3, moved Oregon to 1, Florida State to 2. Now all of a sudden, Alabama might be going to Pasadena, because Florida State would go close. Oregon would get their pick. They would get Pasadena. Florida State would then go to the next one, which is is it the Sugar Bowl? Is that what?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Which is down south. So Alabama being in 3rd place, they might send that. There's a possibility they could have been 3rd or 4th and ended up in Pasadena. So from a conspiracy theorist standpoint, you want Alabama to play close. You want Florida State to play close too. Yeah. But if you had your druthers, if you're the SEC, and as powerful as the SEC network is, which is a part of ESPN, well, all of a sudden you would rather see Alabama in that bowl than going out to Pasadena.
All right, good stuff. All right, well, you shot that down for me, but that's good though. I put you on the spot, and you answered it well, so that's good. All right, real quickly, let's talk about this game now. Listen, I don't know if Alabama will face a defense as good as Missouri's, but I look at two things that stick out. One, Amari Cooper, and I don't know if Missouri's secondary is the strong suit of that team, and I don't know if they can get a pass rush on Blake Sims. And then the other thing is they excel in 3rd down conversions, and those are things that scare me when I look at the two main things about this team, in that they can come up with big plays by using Amari Cooper. Even though teams know they're going to go after him, they still get the ball to him and get it to him often, and their ability to convert on 3rd down. And if they keep that Missouri defense on the field, they could eventually wear down. And those are my biggest concerns for Missouri, because they have to win this game by having their defense keep them in this thing.
I mean, everything you said, it's rightfully so. I mean, that's spot on. I mean, you listen to Greg McElroy of the SEC Network talk, and he explains it so well. He's such a good person to break down film and explain what's going on. I love listening to what he talks about, and he talks about all the different ways that Lane Kiffin has set up Amari Cooper, that no matter what you're trying to do, it's nearly impossible to double team him. And that's going to wreak havoc, because he's going to continue to do that. He's done it all year. He did it Lane Kiffin did that when he was at USC. He's doing it now with Amari Cooper at Alabama. And what you're going to be able to do is get him in position where you can't double team him. And if you are double teaming him, Yeldon's going to carry the ball. And that offensive line is going to open up some gaps, because your front four is tremendous. but they're able. Look what Georgia was able to do from the run game, and Alabama has a similar power run game that they can go to if they have to and need to. And so you've got a double whammy that you've got to fight against. And if Cooper is left open, he's going to exploit some of your weaknesses as well. So from a defensive standpoint, what's going to happen for Missouri to win, in my opinion, is luck and breaks are going to have to be on your side. And those are things that you do have some control over, but sometimes it's the way the ball bounces. And so a loose ball is going to have to take a lucky bounce to Missouri's way, or they're going to have to get an opportune interception and then make a stop. Because Alabama proved that they're never going to feel like they're out of it. They went from 12 points down to 12 points up in the matter of, I think, 6 game minutes or something like that. So, and that was midway through the third period. So they never think that they're out of this game, and they proved that in their biggest rivalry game that they have year after year at the Iron Bowl. So to come in and have Missouri, you guys have your backs against the wall, which is, if I was a Missouri fan, is where I'd want to be, because you know you're going to get your best game out of your players because of that. But that's going to be a tough one for you guys to come away from and get a win.
If you're Lane Kiffin, do you try to establish your pass game with Amari Cooper, or do you attack them, Missouri's defense, that is, the same way that Georgia did, and use Yeldon first? Because I know you kind of mentioned the Cooper, and then if you need to, you go to Yeldon. But how do you think they'll attack Missouri?
You know, if I were as smart as Lane Kiffin on the offensive ball, I'd be making a lot more money than I am, and not sitting here talking to you about what I think. But if I had to guess, I would try to put in some positions where do some play action, where you have the option to give that ball to Yeldon, and put Cooper in positions where you're setting him up for later. Because Kiffin has been tremendous at that. He did that with a number of routes that Cooper ran in the first half that he would then change it up, and Auburn was biting, and they would run something completely different. So, you know, they go from an out and up to a post, and he would be running the same thing, and then he would zig instead of zag, and the Auburn players were set up because they were saying, oh, that's what they ran in the first half, and they ran something completely different. So you probably are going to see some of that early. Alabama offensively is going to be doing things that they can set up for later to be, you know, that dagger in the heart kind of thing in the third and fourth period, which is what they did against Auburn.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where Missouri has their strong suit. That's when they come to play, the third and the fourth quarter. The question will be, can Missouri hold them and keep them close? And if you get into that fourth quarter, and like you said, maybe a couple of bounces go Missouri way. I mean, there's no doubt Missouri certainly has a tough uphill battle against this team. But I like your assessment that they need some breaks. They need some things to kind of get them going, to kind of say, hey, you know what, we can not only hang in this game, but we can win this. And Shane, I was talking with some of the players last year at Mizzou, yesterday afternoon, and a lot of them said, you know, we went down there last year against Auburn just trying to earn some respect. This year we're going to actually try to win the game, and that's the right attitude. Not saying that they're going to do it, but that's the right attitude. You have to go in there, maybe not so starstruck and in awe, and you know, maybe kind of gazing around and checking everything out, but actually showing up to play the game. So that at least being there last year certainly helps this team.
Well, I've watched a lot of football since that game, but did you not start off a little shaky but third and fourth period, you guys made a game of it against Auburn, did you not?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of a back and forth, and it was a 3-point game, 13 minutes to go in the game, and it just kind of got away in that fourth quarter. It was one of those things though where, you know, Missouri would answer and then Auburn would come back, and you know, they just couldn't get really over that hump and kind of put things away, and it got a little frustrating, and that may be the case here this week. I mean, they may be right there, and then they're going to go to Amari Cooper for a big third down play, and that's, I mean, he's just, you know, he's NFL caliber, and that's what concerns me with this one. But
just ask Auburn, that can happen.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll see. Some good stuff though, Shane. I certainly appreciate it. What do you have going on your website this week? You guys do anything special?
Not other than, you know, the same conspiracy theorist activity that we've hinted at here. We'll do a little bit of that we'll take a look at some. We're recording tonight or tomorrow. We've got a few shakeups to deal with, but we're going to look at last week's games. It's just unbelievable how ineffective the SEC all of a sudden became last week. And that just upsets me to no end, because you look at all those matchups that aside from the Iron Bowl and aside from the Egg Bowl, but you look at Georgia Tech, you look at Kentucky really having an opportunity against Louisville. You look at, who else was it that was just totally upset? South Carolina laying an egg at Clemson. That's the first time Spurrier's lost to Clemson. I mean, you look at all these losses that the SEC had, where any other given year you're going, these are wins. Aside from the Kentucky game, of course, but these are wins for the SEC, and it wasn't happening. So there's lots of things to discuss there, because that's impacting bowl season. That costs some teams better bowl games. And so there's a lot to talk about on that end, and we'll make some projections on where we think some teams might end up bowl-wise for going forward as well.
SEC Sports Roundtable.com. In fact, we'll link at MissouriNet.com with this interview in Google Hangout. We'll link back to Shane's website. You can check that stuff out. Shane, great stuff as always. Appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thanks for watching us. And remember to check back at MissouriNet.com throughout the week. And, of course, down in Atlanta, we'll be there with more interviews and more features as we get ready for Mizzou and Alabama. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon at MissouriNet.com.